Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Hey, welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. I'm John Sanders. I'm one of the co-founders of EntrePastors, and this is going to be a different episode in that we're going to be making some big announcements about a pivot that we are making with our EntrePastors platform. I will tell you, over the years of doing EntrePastors, from time to time we get questions like this. How do I know when it's time to quit doing what I'm doing and try something different? In other words, people are asking, how do I know when it's time to pivot, to stop doing the thing that isn't seeming to get the traction and working in the way I had envisioned, and how do I know when it's time to start doing something else? And so in this episode, my co-founder, Les Hughes, and myself are going to be sharing some general principles about the topic of pivoting and how that's an encouraging thing. It's not a negative thing. It's not failure. It's growth when we pivot into a new direction. And also, Les and I are going to be sharing some pivots of our own that we're making with the EntrePastors platform, as well as in our individual businesses that we own and operate, in addition to the pastoral work that we do and the EntrePastors platform that we run together. So, a little bit different episode than normal, but we've got some great content coming your way. Thank you for tuning in. And without any further ado, let's get to this conversation about pivoting. Here we go. Yeah, Les, for me, the word pivot is a positive word. Like, it really is. I don't see the word pivot as a negative thing. I'm usually energized at the idea of pivoting. I've probably reinvented myself, if you can use that term, many times over in my life, and it's good. It's not a negative thing. It's a good thing. And that's what we want to talk about today is how do you know when it's time to pivot, and what are some principles about shifting direction like you're talking about that we can unpack and just encourage someone in our audience who honestly, maybe they need to take a pivot as well. Maybe they've been holding on in the same direction for a little too long, and they need
and this is a question that we get every once in a while, either from a random email from somebody who's found out about our message, or even more specifically in our own business builders group. Every once in a while, one of those guys will say, "Hey, I think I'm at the point that it needs to change. I need to make a pivot. How do I know when to make it and how to make it?" And so this is pretty relevant.
Yeah. So let's just share a few big ideas about this topic that hopefully will be an encouragement. And the first thing that I would want to say is that, first of all, pivoting is not quitting. And I would quickly follow that up with quitting's not always a bad thing either. You know, our mentor, Dan Miller, used to tell us all the time that, you know, that whole adage about winners never quit really isn't true. Winners quit things all the time. They quit things that aren't effective or are not working. But it doesn't necessarily, pivoting doesn't mean you're quitting. It just means you're moving in a different direction, or you're going to make some adjustments and, you know, fix some things that are not working. So I think a lot of times we get this mindset that, man, if I stop doing what I'm doing, or if I go in a different direction, I'm admitting failure somehow, or I'm admitting that, you know, I'm a quitter, which really is not the case at all.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of times when somebody begins a venture, they have in their mind, that's what vision is, right? We see something that doesn't exist yet,
Yep.
and people have in their mind the way things ought to go, or the way something ought to look, and often, like real often, it doesn't look exactly like that. And if you're not careful, it can make us feel like we failed, when who said it needed to be that way exactly when it first started out? You know,
Yeah.
who said it needed to happen in 3 months or 6 months or a year? Who said it needed to involve exactly the people that you thought would be involved? I mean, we just kind of make those things up in our imagination, and it usually doesn't look exactly like we thought it was going to, and that's okay. You know, chances are it's going to be even better. It'll just be
Yeah.
different.
I've heard you give that advice to so many of our pastors and clients over the years that, you know, the thing you start is not necessarily the thing you're going to end up with. And I just think that's so liberating to know that, or to be encouraged with that, that it it's going to evolve over time. And the thing you had a vision for, like you said, is not necessarily what the final product will be. And that's okay. It's totally fine. And so again, changing direction, seeing your vision morph and evolve over time is quite
Yeah.
okay.
And if we want to say it this way, I would say that outcomes and results are objective. They are what they are. But whether or not we see that as a failure is completely something that we conjure up in our minds.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we see it as a failure or something that we've learned to make progress, however you want to frame that, that's very personal and subjective. The outcome is different.
Yeah. Yeah, and that question we posed at the beginning of the show, how do we know when it's time to pivot? One, this isn't going to be the be all end all answer to that, but one thing I would add is you kind of need to see where the doors of opportunity are opening and where you're continually getting resistance. Now, we don't pivot at the immediate onset of resistance. Like, resistance is kind of part of the process in anything worthwhile that you're building. You're going to have kind of all of creation at times fighting back against you to get things going and off the ground. But the reality is, if you keep hitting your head on a certain wall, and then all of a sudden a door opens up on a different wall, it might be a good idea to walk through that door that just opened up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, some just general advice I would give to anybody is where do you seem to be getting traction? What doors are opening? And where are you consistently not breaking through? Where are you
Mm.
consistently feeling stuck? Because there's a clue there. Again, it may not be
Yeah.
the whole picture, but there's a clue of maybe some area of pivot that might need to happen for you.
Yeah. Sometimes that resistance is a good thing.
Sure.
I mean, ask a bodybuilder without resistance, they be a 90-pound weakling, right? But there's a difference between some resistance and getting under a weight that's going to crush you.
Yeah.
So resistance is okay. It can actually
Right.
help you grow.
Right. And that's that healthy tension between not quitting too soon, you know, or changing things before you've really given them a chance to try. But if you've been working at something for a while, you've been grinding, you've been putting in the reps, and it's just not moving, or it's just not getting the traction that you want to see it happen, want to see happening, then, maybe we need to look for the areas where there is traction, where there are things that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say, before we kind of shift gears here a little bit less and share some updates with you and me personally, and our EntrePastors platform, I would just say, this is good advice for anybody, regardless of whether you're talking church ideas and stuff inside of the church world that you're trying to move the ball down the field, or in a business or family or your personal goals, whatever the case may be. Be willing to be flexible, be willing to shift gears, to pivot, to move in a new direction. And it's part of the adventure of life. Again, it's not failure. It's not a reflection of, your worth. To me, it shows someone who has a growth mindset and is willing to see new opportunities and step into
Yep.
new seasons.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit less. You and I guess, having said all of that, have recognized a need for another pivot with EntrePastors. I mean, we've had probably quite a few of these over the years, where this platform has evolved from what we initially envisioned when we set out.
Yeah.
It's a fun ride, and we're not. By the way, let's just get this out there: we're not ending EntrePastors for anyone that's
Not at
like,
all.
"What are they getting ready to say?" That's not what
Not
we're
at all.
getting ready to
But
say.
a lot of what you're probably referring to as a pivot, I would say is that, but in the form of addition, right? So we've
Yeah,
added a lot to the platform over the last few years, and we knew that we would. We started out quickly and simply, you know, and developed some relationships and partnerships along the way that have been so valuable to us and meant a lot. And we've taken very little off of our plate. We've
mm,
added to our team, um, and we've had people leave our team, for other things. But we really haven't. The things that we're going to be sharing today, I would put into the category more of pivots and focusing on some things that seem to be what people really are asking for more than some of the others.
yeah, that's well said. So This pivot is more subtraction of some things in order to free up time and focus and energy on some things that are working in our lives.
There you go.
And
Yep.
then maybe, stop trying to do some things that are not getting momentum. So
Right.
here's how I'll approach this, Les, and you can give your feedback, but I want to share just kind of a quick update. A few weeks ago, I had the privilege to go to a really cool non-conference. I guess it's called the Unconference down in Sarasota, Florida, put on by our friend Vincent Puglisi. It was the first event of this kind that he had ever put on, and really cool gathering of some neat people, many of whom are part of our EntrePastors world. I saw quite a few of our
Mhm.
people down there who've either been guests on the show or they're in our business builders community or whatever. But I had a really cool opportunity to sit through a mastermind event before the actual conference started. And we were all supposed to bring one question, like where are you stuck or struggling? And so I thought of all the different businesses I've got going and whatnot. I brought EntrePastors was my problem child that I brought to the table. And the question that I asked specifically was, is the niche at EntrePastors too broad? Initially, when we started this, Les, I thought we had a really dialed in niche. Like, we help pastors launch businesses. Who else is doing that? You never hear about that anywhere. So I thought that's a really
Mhm.
tight niche. But as you and I have been on this journey, we've seen maybe that's still too broad. And so that was kind of the question that I brought. And I got some pretty strong feedback. It wasn't negative, but it may sound that way at first blush. And I'm going to share a little bit of that feedback here, and then you and I can chop it up for a minute. Because on one hand, when I heard this, I was like in both, like simultaneously, I was annoyed with pastors and also super proud of many of the pastors in our community, because
Yeah.
there's exceptions to what was being said to me.
Yeah.
Here's kind of the Cliff Note version of the advice I was given is they said essentially, John, you should niche down further into your handyman thing. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But they said you should focus less on pastors. And for obvious reasons, that's a little bit of a slap in the face for someone who's trying to build a platform called EntrePastors. But then
Yeah.
here's what they went on to say. They laid out a few thoughts. I'm going to say them and then we can unpack them. They said, John, here's the reality. The majority of pastors are not going to take the journey that you and Les are trying to invite them on. And here's why. This is them, not me. I'll tell you if I agree with it or not in just a minute. But what they said is, first of all, you're dealing with a profile of people that have very real financial struggles. They have real financial limitations. Secondly, they have even bigger mental limitations, not in terms of their intelligence, but the scarcity that exists among pastors, that poverty mentality. They said, thirdly, you're dealing with a group of people who, even if they get to that point of being sick and tired of the financial struggle, the ones that are actually going to be willing to see entrepreneurial business as a solution to that problem versus just, praying and trusting that God will provide somehow is really small. And then here's what they said. I got some feedback from the room that, John, many pastors are lazy. Many pastors do not have the work ethic to push through and do the things that you and Les have done and are doing in terms of building businesses in addition to the pastoral work that you're doing. And so essentially what they said is the number of pastors, the percentage of pastors that are actually willing to take that journey with you are so small. And that's why I say, on one hand, I don't disagree with all of that feedback. And I want some of the people in this audience to hear it, because if the shoe fits, put it on and wear it. But I also simultaneously felt really proud of so many of the pastors, Les, that you and I know, because there's many exceptions to those statements, and we know them.
Sure.
They're in our
Sure.
community.
Yeah.
They're pastors
It
who
is.
are doing the work. They're hustling. They're working hard. They're pushing through the limiting beliefs and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I still kind of went away from that going, they're not wrong. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they've got something there. And as a result, like Jon and Les, like we're not getting the traction that we desire with EntrePastors. We're getting some, we're hearing some success stories and seeing some, but we're just not moving the needle as much as we'd like to with EntrePastors. So I'll let you respond to some of that, Les, and weigh in, but I just wanted to share that was some of the feedback that I got. And I really felt like that, among some other statements that were made to me, like
Mm-hmm.
God said some stuff through some important people into my life in this arena.
Yeah. And I would just say that many people who just heard you walk through that, if they're really, you know, self-aware, or even maybe self-critical, and look at themselves in the mirror and say, okay, is this true, or is, how much of that is maybe true of me? They might have seen a little bit of themselves in some of those statements, not all of them, but maybe some of them. I would say that, in many ways, pastors are just a microcosm of the culture in many ways. There are some
Sure.
distinctives about them, their calling and their role, that are unique, like other professions as well. But I think that as I really think about and reflect on those four or five things you just went through, I would say that it only those become an issue with people who have a fixed mindset rather than a growth mindset. So, for example, the people that are in our group we mentioned, at one point or another, if they were honest, they would probably say, and I'm talking about the business builders group or our peers that have some kind of ministry background, they would say that at one point in time, maybe they had some significant financial limitations, or mindset limitations, or maybe they didn't have as strong a work ethic as they needed to have in order to really grow that financial or business part of their world, but that they overcame those things. And we do a whole different series of podcasts over what that looks like. But a lot of people struggle with the things that you just went through. But the thing is, you got to get over them
Hmm.
if you want to achieve some other things or accomplish some other things in your life. And that book, Mindset, which is not a that's not a faith-based book. It's not a Christian book. It'd be considered secular. But that author walks through what it means to have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And if you're fixed or set in your ways, and you say, well, I am a certain way, and I'm this way or that way because that's how I'm wired, or that's how God made me, then you're stuck. But if you have a growth mindset to say, well, I may have some limitations now, but I'm willing to learn new things, and I'm willing to try new things, and even work harder in order to overcome those and grow in those areas where I feel like I'm weaker, now we're talking, and
Yeah.
we can see some change.
Yeah, totally agree. And which is why, Les, you and I want to make this so clear, abundantly clear. You and I are not giving up on pastors in this pivot we're talking about. We're not shutting down this platform, and we still will continue to be here to serve those that are, willing to take action, that have that growth mindset and are willing to do what we believe is a solution to help them get to a better, healthier place in their family, their
Yeah.
church life, their financial life. And we want to continue to take that journey with them. I
Yeah.
still say my dream is to get to the place personally, Les, in my own life where I figured out the money side of things. I have enough income coming in from, a few streams of revenue where that's just not a concern. There's enough margin between me and life financially that then what that makes possible is for my
Hmm.
days to be spent largely just having powerful conversations and serving people, whether it's face to face in person or whether it's online, in Zoom calls like this or whatever. That's really the dream that I'm after. And I still see pastors being a huge part of that because I love pastors. You love pastors. We are pastors and we love the church. And so we're going to continue to be here. Having said all that, the time for a pivot is upon us where you and I are recognizing, like, hey, we're going to focus on some things individually, both you and I, where we are getting traction, where we're seeing the needle moving, so to speak, and we'll find the parts of EntrePastors maybe that aren't working and just put an end to those specific pieces of our platform while keeping some others going. So I think what we should do, maybe just you and I can take a brief moment. I'll let you go first and just share a little bit about some of the things you've been building. We've both been building things on our own in addition to EntrePastors, and you can talk about some of that. And but I would say this too, in the days to come, you're going to see links on our website at entrepastors.com to some of these various individual projects that Jon and Les are doing. And my vision right as of now is someday in the future, we'll have a lot of links for other things that other people are doing that are a part of our community. Because from the beginning, you and I have said that EntrePastors, we see it becoming kind of a hub of relationships where we can
Hmm.
introduce pastors and ministry minded people to some of these specific avenues to help them, move forward and get
Yeah.
unstuck. So
Well, and,
go
and
ahead.
for everybody that's been listening to us really probably since the beginning, because it's only been going on 4 years, 3.5 years or so. So you all remember when we started this platform and the questions that we had, and we've found some answers along the way. One of the things that we want to model, though, we want to be transparent, with our business and model the things that we're learning as well, or share the things that we're learning as well. So one of these principles is that none of us have an unlimited amount of time or energy. We want to be efficient and we want to be good stewards of the time that we do have. And so part of that is saying no to some things, or even pushing pause to some things, or cutting them loose entirely, so that we can focus on the things that are just moving the needle more and showing the results that we really want to see. So for me, I'm for years now, my writing has been in the form of, if we're talking professionally, it's been in the form of, sermons that I'm preparing, or when I was in school, it was research papers and reports. And but now Bible studies or devotions, if we're talking about something that's printed and published, it's that devotionals type stuff. And if I'm honest, it's been on the professional side in preparation for content that churches were paying me for in the form of my salary. That's part of my role as a lead pastor and preaching pastor. But in addition to that, it's been a hobby, something that I enjoy going back to, um, just writing some things because that was a creative outlet, and so I've been doing that for as long as I can remember. And so these relationships that we talked about and people that we met in this journey has introduced me to what it means to ghostwrite. And now, in addition to published books, you've got articles on platforms like LinkedIn and X and many others that people go to as their source of information, And so I've learned now from mentors how to turn that into a business and how to monetize that, talk to potential clients and be referred to others that are potential clients. And that's gotten a lot of traction in my life. And now it's starting to be very rewarding financially for my family and me. And so part of my personal pivot is going to be focusing more on that, on the writing and the ghost writing platform. And then I'll be glad to also help other people who have that desire or have those skills and gifts. We can talk about how to reach out if they want to know more later on. But as you're willing to come alongside of someone and help them, we're talking about being specific now. So you'll talk about some other things in a few moments, but I think I do have some things to share now in terms of a person uniquely from a ministry background who wants to get into writing or ghostwriting. I think I can share some things to help you get there, or maybe get there quicker than what it
Yeah.
took me. So that's where I'm going to really be leaning into in the near future.
And Les, I just got to tell you, man, I'm like genuinely proud of you to see the traction that you've gotten with that ghostwriting business, because I've kind of watched it from the earliest, rendition of it to see what it is
For sure.
becoming. And I see where you're going with it, man. I see the days coming where you're going to have a whole agency of writers that you're allowing to, be paid to do what they love to do, and you're handling
Mhm.
so much of the other stuff of that. Man, I just see such great things coming. So really, it's been neat to
Thanks.
see that
I
growth in
appreciate
you
that.
and the business. Yeah, man. And again, you had said this earlier. I'll say it a little differently. It's just you and I both have been smoking what we're selling, in terms of EntrePastors. As we've been encouraging other pastors, we too have been building our own businesses. And so, yeah. And likewise with me, a few years ago, I started a small handyman business just as a way to make some extra cash flow in a season where I really needed it. And, the short story is very quickly I saw a market, I mean, just a huge market for this, and the ability to kind of utilize the skills I'd used for years as a church planter and pastor of what became a multi-site church with teams in multiple locations. I just use that same skill set to do what I really love to do. I'm not
Mhm.
really that passionate about, fixing people's broken stuff in their house, but I recognize there's a need for that. There's money that people are willing to pay for that service, but I love to build people. I love to build teams, and to get to do that then around this handyman business, like that's been really fun. And that business has
Mhm.
grown. And in recent months, I have gotten just a ton of traction, not only with that business itself, but also helping others specifically, some pastors that are even in our business builders group, and some that are not yet in any of our, EntrePastors things, but they're kind of connected through, just through our message. Like I've been able to encourage and help a few people start their own handyman business. And so the encouragement I was given at that in that mastermind event was they were saying, John, you should lean into that. You should help not just pastors, but help people, period. Anybody that wants to make extra income as a handyman, help them launch their business. So for me personally, my pivot might look, probably will, I'm just going to say more definitively, it will look like me helping people launch handyman businesses. And I already have a URL for it. It's called handymanstarters.com. That nothing's live at the moment of this recording, but maybe by the time people are listening to this, not only will that be live, but we'll have it linked from EntrePastors to our various
That's
individual
awesome.
platforms where they can come and find us and get help. But
Mhm.
yeah, so in addition to helping, other people launch their own businesses, I also see that endeavor of, reaching other people around the country in this space and in this niche could very well be a source of relationships that continues to build my own handyman business. And those two things can kind of feed each other. So I'm going to give some focus to that. And I'm excited about that. I came away from that event just with real clarity, like that's the direction I need to go. I need to lean into
Mhm.
that. And then you and I, you had mentioned earlier, is this pivot is more about subtracting some things off of our
Mhm.
plate with EntrePastors, which we'll unpack here in a minute. That kind of frees up the bandwidth to say, let's maybe put a pause on the things here that aren't moving the needle as much, so that we have the bandwidth to focus on the things that are. So, anything else before we talk
Yeah.
about what's changing?
Oh, that's well said. And even that, I mean, this is absolutely a matter of some sensitivity to the things we've talked about, but also a sensitivity to what the Lord may be doing
Mm,
and how He's directing our path and being sensitive to some of that primarily. Like I'll give you a great example for anybody that doesn't know. This is completely unorchestrated by you or I, but it really turned out well. As you were installing a television
mm,
for someone in your area, you began talking to the conversation went from one place to the other. You discovered that this lady was writing a book or wanted to write a book, and so you just gave her my contact information because she seemed like she really didn't have a real roadmap to do that or a
yeah.
strategy to do that. She contacted me. She had already written parts of it, but just didn't really have a lot of direction and needed some accountability and some strategic coaching and kind of putting her on the right track. And I had some connections with the publisher as well. So here's the part. Another part we didn't. I wouldn't have thought it would have turned out this way, but because I was trying to orchestrate it too. I had a pretty good relationship with the publisher. I felt like we could get that thing printed and in bookstores and all that. While I'm working hard on my end doing that, she's having a dadgum conversation with another publisher out where she lives who made her an offer, and it wasn't even my personal connection that got the book offer. They offered her a contract. She took it. Make a long story short, that book became a bestseller,
Mm.
all because you decided to go and install a television.
There you go. And that's so cool. Like God gets the glory for all of it. He just writes way
That's the
cooler
hand of the
stories.
Lord,
Yeah.
100%. And
Yeah.
and for somebody out there that thinks you need to have just the right connections or an agent or a PR firm, not to trash all of that stuff, but God does not need any of those things to put you where he wants to put you,
Yeah.
period.
And I think that Les, as I hear you kind of recap that story, and it's cool. Like that's Lori Sheldon. She's been a guest on our
And it
show.
didn't stop there.
No, then we had her publisher not too long ago, Jeremy Brown, that we connect with. It's all about
Hmm.
these relationships. But
And her daughter
yeah, her daughter
was on the
Reagan, we
mission
got her
field.
hooked up with some people
Hmm.
that we know that have been able to be a blessing there. So
Yeah.
it's all about just moving into the direction of things that are working. And sometimes you just don't know until you take a step forward. And you and
It's
I
just
have,
it's trusting.
yeah,
It's just trusting, you know.
yeah, we've been doing that together. I mean, individually before we met each other for quite some time, and then now as we've come together to build EntrePastors, we just keep kind of holding it with an open hand, not too tightly, not
Mhm.
too loosely, but just willing to let it become what it needs to become, and go where God's guiding and directing with it. So let's get into some real specifics here. I don't want to take too much more time on this recording here, Les, but I do want to give just an overview of some of the things that are changing, some of the things that are not changing, and that way, if our community is seeing some major, shifts or pivots, and they're like, "What in the world is going on with EntrePastors?" You kind of know. So let me just run
Mhm.
down a quick list here of
Yeah.
what's changing and how and where you can still continue to, connect with me and Les and receive our support if you want it. So one thing we decided very quickly, we're going to shut down what we kind of, I guess, for the lack of a better word, in the online business space, would call our low ticket offer, our EntrePastor starter community. We just went ahead and decided to delete that offer and bring that to a close. We're sunsetting that. We have our last call coming up here in the month of it's February as you and I are recording this, 2025.
Yeah.
We're doing our last call with that group toward the end of the month, and just inviting them into some different ways to connect with us. But we're going to bring that to a close. We also are no longer going to be offering our night school. Again, it's one of those things we tried and just didn't get a ton of movement on. It didn't seem to hit the
Yeah.
need. And so that's fine. We're going to just call that
And
what it is and shut that
before
down.
you leave those things completely, I'll just also put in that that material, a lot of that content, courses, and all that is still going to be out there and available. It'll just be free now.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
So not as big a community aspect maybe, but the content will still be out there and available. It'll just be for whoever wants it.
There you go. So you'll still have access to that, to the content. That's well said, Les, just not the regular community part of that. Our podcast, here's a big announcement. We're not like totally shutting down the podcast. It will continue. Everything we've created will continue to exist. We are giving ourselves the permission to not be committed to weekly content, which is kind of historically like bad advice for people who want to build and grow a podcast. Like you need to be consistent and keep cranking out weekly content. We've been doing that for 230 some episodes. We've had amazing guests. We've shared amazing stories. We've connected with awesome people. But at this season, as we're looking at things like that, the podcast is not the thing that's really moving the needle for us. So we hold the right to, at any point we want to come back and create more content, we can and we will. This probably won't be our last episode ever. But we are going to kind of put it on pause for a while. We might look at bringing some seasons from time to time of a specific topic where for a few weeks we roll out some content. But for right now, you won't be seeing probably weekly uh, updates to our podcast. Anything you want to add on that one, Les?
No, you covered it. Yeah, there are so, I mean, there's so many episodes. So I would just say, if you have conversations with people who are really, especially people with a ministry background, who are looking for ways to improve the financial part of their worlds or create a business or other streams of revenue, please continue to refer them to some of these episodes. There's a lot of back content. We know that it's helpful to a lot of people because we get feedback from people on that. So it's still going to be out there, but just as you said, as far as those weekly episodes, they're not going to drop as frequently.
Yeah, very good. Our website will continue to exist. EntrePastors.com will still be live and online and the home of all things EntrePastors. Something else we are very excited to continue and not shut down is our Business Builders community. That is really where we see our community getting the most traction moving forward. Those are pastors and other ministry-minded folks that are starting businesses, running businesses, and that community is just a great place where they get coaching,
Mhm.
encouragement, support, accountability, weekly meetings, and there's an investment with that. It's $99 a month, but our goal is to, help our clients see that back, many times over and help them regain that investment very quickly. So that is not going away. And by the way, if you're interested in joining us for that, please connect with me or Les. We would love to bring you into that community,
Yeah.
and that will continue on. We just added a new member this week, and we're really
Mhm.
excited about, what continues to happen there. Finally, Les and I will continue to offer our voice message coaching for those that may say, listen, I don't have the time for a weekly group coaching call. I'm not really interested in that aspect, but I would love to have that support and encouragement and coaching and accountability at the touch of a button. That's what voice message coaching is. It's where you have direct access to me and Les personally without any other group involvement in that, and we just get to speak into your life back and forth in an ongoing conversation. So that will continue to exist in this current season of EntrePastors, but a little bit different, a little bit of a pivot. We're excited about the future. And Les, I'll let you wrap up with any final thoughts that you may have about all this, but that's
Mm.
kind of what I wanted to say about it.
Oh, well, man, thanks to everybody who's joined us on this journey. We hope, just as we're staying, we hope you'll stay as well. And thanks for all the feedback you've given us, for all the episodes that you've listened to, for coming to our live event, those of you that did. So we're really grateful for all that support, and anything that we can do for you, please feel free to reach out, and we'll be glad to do what we can.
Absolutely. I ditto that. Anything we can do to support you, we're here for you. And this is not goodbye, guys. It's so long for now on this podcast, but we're still available. We'd love to connect with you. Shoot me a message at Jon, at EntrePastors.com, or you can reach Les, Les, at EntrePastors.com. And we'll meet you there and serve you in any way that we can. So God bless, guys.
There
So
you
long
go.
for now. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.